everyone, and welcome to the Social Impact webinar. I'm so glad to have you all join us today, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. We're going to get started with some intros from staff, followed by Ross differentiators, and then intros from current students. Before we get started, I also want to let everyone know that you can ask questions throughout, and then we will leave some time at the end to go over some Q&A. So I will get started here. My name is Elizabeth Chambers, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions here at Ross.
I'm Dimitri Wones. I'm the Associate Director of Career Coaching and our Career Development Office. I'm also a Ross alum, class of 2017. I was co-president of Net Impact while I was here, so excited to be with you all today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Kelterborn. I'm the Program Director for the Business Plus Impact Initiative at Ross, and I'm excited to be here as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt and Dimitri. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So first, I want to talk about Ross and what differentiates Ross, and just a brief overview of Ross in general. So first, experience-driven learning. So if you learn best by doing them, Ross is definitely the place for you. Our students can talk more about some of the experiences that they've had here by doing some of this experience-driven learning. Secondly, we have a close-knit community. Although it is a diverse community here with our 420 students incoming this class year from over 40 different countries, the community here is made up of collaborative, passionate students. Lastly, we have Go Blue, Go Anywhere. So you'll hear Go Blue on game day when you're wearing the Block M. You'll see it in email signatures, and you'll even hear it in cities around the world while you're wearing the Block M. Go Blue not only connects you with students here at Ross, but also the greater community of the University of Michigan. So similar to Go Blue, students can truly go anywhere, whether it's in terms of industry or location. Ross opens doors for students as about a quarter of students go to the West Coast, the other quarter go to the East Coast, a quarter go to Chicago, and 7% internationally. Similarly, Go Blue, Go Anywhere also refers to the global opportunities that you'll have here while at Ross. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over to our current students for them to be able to give an introduction to themselves and talk about their MAP projects and some of their experiences here. So Tim, I'll let you start.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Carter. I'm a second-year MBA student. I come from the Detroit area originally, but I spent 7 years before Ross doing international relief and development in sub-Saharan Africa, primarily in Kenya and South Sudan. This summer, I had the opportunity to return to Africa again, doing an impact-focused internship, helping launch a business. My friend has invented a new medical device. It's a low-cost ventilator to save the lives of infants in respiratory distress, primarily for developing countries. So that was an exciting project for the summer. For me, with an impact focus, Ross was really an obvious choice for me. So looking for a top business school that really focuses on developing leaders to make a positive difference. So there are so many ways you can get involved at Impact at Ross. I'll touch on a few of them here, and you'll hear about a snapshot from the others throughout this webinar as well. First is through MAP. Many of you may have heard of MAP. It stands for Multidisciplinary Action Projects. These are a required part of the program. So at the end of your first year, the last 7 weeks in March and April, all students work on consulting projects for companies throughout the world. Students get to rank their top 15 choices, but generally you get one of your top 5. And so I honestly would have been happy with any of the top 15 because they were such incredible projects. But I'm very fortunate to have gotten on the project that I did. So I was working with the National Park Service in Peru. Our project was quite unique. We were working to develop a sustainable business model for the commercialization of bushmeat. If you don't know what bushmeat is, it can be alligators, deer, wild boar, any kind of game meat that's hunted. And they were looking to do basically what's been done very successfully in South Africa, Namibia, even the U.S. with the deer, is by designing the right program and legalizing hunting, you can actually improve conservation of wildlife. And so that was essentially our project. We got to camp out in the middle of the Amazon, go on hunts with local Amazonian hunters. We met with customers, restaurants throughout the country as well. and we're able to develop a plan that would increase revenue 8 times and improve conservation significantly as well. So that was definitely an amazing trip and a highlight of my experience to date. You can also see a list here of other areas I'm involved in. I'm definitely, you could say, overcommitted, but it's kind of impossible not to when you get to Ross. There are so many awesome opportunities to get involved in impact that it's really impossible to limit yourself. So I try to get involved in as much as possible. And I'll touch on a few of these a bit later. Of course, you can feel free to reach out to me in the future if you have questions on any of these as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Knowles. I am originally from Orlando, Florida. I did my undergrad at Washington University in St. Louis and also have a master's in education from the University of Pennsylvania. Prior to Ross, I spent 5 years, both in education through Teach for America and then in management consulting, where I was a strategy consultant across multiple industries at Accenture. I want to touch a little bit on my MAP. Like Tim mentioned, MAP was a wonderful opportunity for me. I had a chance to explore the pharmaceuticals industry. So something I had no kind of prior experience in. And so we worked with the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Wholesalers and Imperial Health Sciences, assessing the viability of forming a Pan-African Pharmaceutical Wholesalers Association. So interviewed potential members of this association across the pharmaceutical supply chain, and I had the opportunity to spend 3 weeks in South Africa, Malawi, and Kenya. This past summer, I was a strategy intern at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I worked primarily on looking at our investment strategies in terms of high school advising and thinking about kind of what are some of the resource constraints that we see nationally. And so that was an opportunity for me to combine both my strategy experience with my education background. And so it provided the opportunity to do kind of exactly what I wanted to do when I got to business school. And so some of the things that I'm involved in here at Ross, I'm the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for our MBA Council. So thinking about at an institutional level, how can we be sure that everyone who comes to Ross, it's an inclusive place for them, but even within the classroom, what are we doing to ensure that our professors are thinking about inclusive teaching practices, and that our case studies are not only focusing on domestic companies, but also international companies, and ensuring there are more diverse protagonists that we see in cases. So I'm happy to talk about any of those things that are listed, and we'll kind of take a deep dive into some of these activities a little bit later.
Hey everyone, I'm Ricky Wozniak. I am an MBA MS student here, so a dual degree student between Ross and the School for Environment and Sustainability, which makes me an URBR. And URBR is the institute that sort of covers all students who are going to both schools in their time here at Michigan. I'm from outside Chicago, a suburb called Bolingbrook, sort of where the suburbs meet the cornfields. I went to Northwestern for my undergrad, where I majored in economics and psychology. Before coming to Ross, I was a vendor manager on the pet supplies team at Amazon. So purchasing pet apparel, pet grooming products, fish tanks, all those kinds of things. And then came here to turn my career into more of an impact-focused career in the food industry, which I worked with on a prior role at Amazon. My MAP project was with the Spangler Candy Company, which was an awesome chance to get to know more about the experiences of food manufacturers and in this situation from a marketing standpoint. So I got to work on the Dum Dums brand, which is a really iconic brand that I have known and loved since I was very young. Getting a budget to understand who are their consumers and how do we build strategies around growing that brand. My internship this past summer was in procurement at Anheuser-Busch InBev. So being able to see how procurement decisions can make the food and beverage industry more sustainable by looking at agriculture, watersheds, packaging, and energy procurement across the organization. Here at Ross, I'm involved in Social Venture Fund as Director of Fund Operations. I'll go deeper into that later on. I'm also on the Student Advisory Board of the URB Institute as VP of Communications, and I'm on Up for Business working to help more LGBT applicants learn more about Ross as VP of Admissions.
Awesome, thanks guys. I love hearing about all the different math projects because I get to learn a little bit more about so many opportunities here. So thanks so much for sharing. I'll go into why Ross now. So before we do a deeper dive into social impact at Ross, I also want to mention that making a positive difference is part of our ethos here at Ross, and it is a part of our culture. Our dean sees business as a force for positive change, and we do seek leaders who make a positive difference in the world. So with that being said, there are over 100 different ways to make a social impact here at Ross, as some of these students have touched on today, and we'll go into a deeper dive of that as we continue on here. Before we go into that, I also want to touch on the extensive network that we have here at Ross. So as I also mentioned before, we have, lots of our alumni are able to go into different areas within social impact. So we have here a slide that shows some of the opportunities that our alumni have gone into. In addition to that, we also have, with part of the University of Michigan, we do have the largest network of living alumni. So that's great. So we do have that the ability to be able to reach out to that network and to continue that community. So next, we can go right into Business Plus Impact. So let's dive right in, and I'll turn it over to Matt.
All right. So I want to talk about the Business Plus Impact initiative at a high level. I mean, you've heard from the students and the multiple experiences that they've had, but just want to take a step back to talk about what the Business Plus Impact initiative is all about. So first, it's a school-wide initiative to embed impact into every core activity, from teaching to faculty research and our outreach as a school to the broader community. And as part of that, we have the goal for the school to be the most progressive source of ideas and solutions for how business can address the challenges of our generation. We recognize that every year we're graduating 420 to 430 MBAs and sending them out into the world. And we feel like it would be a missed opportunity if we don't equip them with the skills and knowledge to tackle some of these challenges that we have as a society. And as far as I know, I don't see this really existing at any other business school in the country. Often it might social impact might be a corner of the school where students can choose to opt into it, and it also might not be action-based like so many of the opportunities are here at Ross. So we take pride in the fact that we are trying to, like we said, embed impact into everything at the school. But what you might be wondering, what does this actually look like? What kinds of actions are we taking to make this happen? So I want to touch on two things. First is we partner with the different groups here at Ross to try and strengthen their impact. So you might look at it as somewhat of a internal consultant to the school to make sure that all the different facets have some incorporation of impact into it. So right now we're already partnering with the centers and institutes. Ricky mentions the Herb Institute. We also have the Senior Leadership Institute. All of these centers and institutes actually report up to the Business Plus Impact Initiative. And so there's a great pipeline there to try and figure out what are ways that we can strengthen their impact. And we also partner with the student clubs as well. Many of you might be familiar with Open Road, which is a group it's really student driven, but with our backing. And it's a program where students go out on the road for 5 weeks, working with different social entrepreneurs across the country. One other example that we've been doing for a couple of years is we have the Zell Lurie Institute for Entrepreneurial Studies. They run a business planning competition every year, and we've partnered with them to create a specific track of that business planning competition that's focused on social entrepreneurs. So students that are looking at not only some kind of financial gain in their venture, but also a social or environmental gain as well. Something new that we're particularly excited about is a partnership with the Accounting Club, where we have it's called Ross Accounting Outreach, and it's every Friday students travel to U of M's Detroit location and works with entrepreneurs in the city of Detroit with basic accounting to help them navigate what that might look like. And we see that as a great pipeline to engagement with the city of Detroit. So through that activity, we're hoping that we can look at other opportunities like MAP, where students can continue to work with those entrepreneurs that we're partnering with on their accounting. And then I also want to talk about our partnerships with faculty, because we do feel like that is a critical part of the school. And if we can have some influence on the types of research that faculty are doing and trying to connect that to the broader societal and environmental challenges that we face, then that would be a real success story for the school. So we're having more regular convenings and conferences. Next week, we're excited to partner with the Aspen Institute and have a conference titled Working Towards Shared Prosperity, where the focus is going to be on an academic executive dialogue on job creation, job quality, and shared prosperity. And then we're also looking at ways that we can tie in some of the co-curriculars, like our board fellowship program that we run, to specific classes that faculty are teaching as well. So we have a board governance course that is taught by a faculty member here that our board fellows who are serving on nonprofit boards during the school year can enroll in that course and get a much more deeper level of understanding of board governance while in the program. So that's a broad overview of the different ways that we're trying to partner and infuse impact into more activities at the school. One other thing that we recognize is that, Elizabeth mentioned the 100 ways to make a social impact, but that's great, but it can be a little bit intimidating for new students. And what we decided to do was to actually create a one-stop shop for all things impact at the university. And we call it the Business Plus Impact Portal. So the portal, right now you can see we have it set up based off of courses that you can take that relate to impact, clubs that you can participate in, co-curriculars, which are non-credit activities that you can do outside of your classes, an events calendar, the colleagues, so these are faculty, staff, and students who are particularly engaged in this space, and then the career support that exists here at the school. So the goal in this is for students to be able to navigate to here and easily match their passions and interests to the opportunities that exist on campus. I'd encourage all of you to check it out. It's really easy to get to. It's just rossimpact.com. Take a look through it, see the breadth of opportunities that exist here at the university, and let us know if you have any feedback. This is just one of those buttons that you can select on. This is the co-curriculars button. So you can see here a list of all the different co-curriculars that students can participate in just during the fall semester. And we have about 24 co-curriculars listed there, ranging from being a Plus Lab fellow with the Center for Positive Organizations, participating in the board fellowship program, or going to some of the other programs that exist at the university, like the Citizen Interaction Design at the School of Information. One of the things that is a real value add to coming to Ross is the fact that we have other top-tier schools at the university that you can engage with, and it's very easy for students to do that. So that's a little intro into the Business Plus Impact Initiative and the Impact Portal. I'll hand it back over to Elizabeth to dive deeper.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So with that in mind, we'll actually turn it over to our current students, Jasmine, then Ricky, then Tim, to talk a little bit about those co-curriculars here at Ross. So Jasmine, over to you.
Thanks. So I first want to talk about Detroit Revitalization and Business. And so this is a club at Ross that is focused primarily on thinking about how close we are to such a vibrant and thriving city. And so how can we get more Rossers to be involved in some of the local events that are going on, but then also interacting with businesses. So two of the main opportunities that the Detroit Revitalization and Business Club has is the mentorship program, but then also as well as the impact projects. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my involvement with the impact projects last year. And so impact projects, they provide Ross students with an opportunity to work with a Detroit nonprofit for a 7-week consulting or design thinking project. So we're thinking about how can we solve real problems to deliver impact. So past partners have come from a variety of industries, so from education to neighborhood development to entrepreneurship. And these teams consist of 5 to 6 students, and you're practicing your client engagement, consulting, project management, and problem solving. So my impact project team worked with a national nonprofit, Vision to Learn, and examined the constraints and some of the opportunities from their partnership with Detroit Public Schools. Vision to Learn provides free eye exams and also free glasses to students in underserved communities. So our team was able to focus on specific pathways to enhance marketing and outreach and think about how they could improve their relationships with parents and community stakeholders. And so for me, it was an opportunity to, again, combine my interest with education and my consulting background. And so kind of throughout all of these opportunities, I'm thinking about what are ways in which I can bring my skill set to helping the communities that I'm from and that I'm passionate about. So at the end of our project, our work not only was able to impact locally in Detroit, but they also presented our work to their national convening. And so at this Vision to Learn employee retreat, they're thinking about how some of our solutions can be scaled. And so it's a great way to see how work that you're doing on a local level can also make an impact nationally. So now I'll turn it over to Ricky.
Awesome. So Social Venture Fund, I briefly mentioned it, but I'll go deeper into it now. So we are, as you can see here, the first impact investing fund led by students in the nation. So what we do is we look for companies that are both driving those financial results, so they're profitable, they're driving revenue, but they're also driving impact either socially, environmentally, or both. And we look at both of those areas when making our eventual investment decision as a venture fund. And I'll go a little bit deeper into what that process looks like on the next slide here. So what we're doing is we're screening a large number of deals, reaching out to incubators and others in the impact investing space to understand who's out there so we can take a look at those. And we're doing so in 4 different industry circles that are first education, healthcare, food systems and environment, and companies that are driving urban revitalization. And by separating ourselves into 4 circles, we dive very deep into what's happening in these industries, what companies are really driving change, and making sure that we're looking deeply into those to then bring sort of the cream of the crop deals to the fund when we're presenting these 8 top deals. And so we're showing these to the fund so we can select those 3 best deals for the year to go into deeper due diligence on. And what that means, it's a 6-week deep dive that we have teams of students, so Ross MBAs, Ross BBAs, and law students work with members of our board and very closely with the entrepreneurs to understand what are the expected financial results of these companies. Can they reach the market size they plan to meet, and what do we think they're going to be long term? While also looking very deep into the impact side of things. What are the outputs that they're driving by way of doing business? By every time they're doing business, what can they make in terms of outcome and long-term impact on the community or on the environment? And also looking into, will this entrepreneur want to work with us on our eventual portfolio consulting projects, which we'll do with these companies every single year. We've been around for 10 years, and every year we do these consulting projects, which add great value over time, and we want a great partner to work with on that. Last year, we invested in 6 Foods, and this company we're very excited about. What they're doing is they're working to change the way that people in the U.S. view protein. So meat has a huge impact on the environment from a water standpoint, from a land standpoint, and from an animal welfare standpoint. And they're working to open people's minds to insect protein as a way to improve the environmental impact of foods. And it's very exciting to work with them as they drive that future, and we can partner with them on that. And I'll pass it over to Tim.
Thank you, Ricky. I'm getting excited just listening to what you and Jasmine have been working on. It's very exciting. First, I want to talk about Wolverine Disaster Relief. So this is a new club at Ross. I started the club last year together with Andrew Davis, another first-year MBA student. Basically, when we got to campus in the fall, hurricane after hurricane was pummeling the southern United States and the Caribbean. And so, but we realized even though we're here getting our MBA degrees, that did not mean we cannot still contribute to the relief efforts. So we started a new club. Last year, we focused on fundraising. We also sent 2 different volunteer service teams to Puerto Rico and Coastal Bend, Texas. We have another trip to Houston coming up next week, actually. Over spring break this year, we're planning to take a service trip to Dominica, an island in the Caribbean. And we're also planning for an M-Trek next year. So those of you joining the program next year, you'd have the opportunity to participate in that. In addition, we're planning to expand the club further to allow students to get involved in consulting engagements that are contributing to disaster response efforts by humanitarian relief agencies. I also want to talk a bit about the Emerging Markets Club. I am the co-president of the club for this coming year. This club is focused on really the base of the pyramid concept, which started right here in Michigan, you may have heard about, which is the idea of using business to address poverty and social challenges of our day. It's particularly focused on emerging and developing countries. So we offer a lot of programs for students. We're primarily a professional club, so we work to prepare students who are interested in moving into roles focused on the development of emerging and developing economies. We offer global action projects that are very popular every year. It's basically MAP, but without the travel. So students get to engage in consulting projects during the fall semester, supporting companies working in emerging markets. Many of them, it's both for-profit and nonprofit, but a strong impact focus. We also have a career trek to Washington, D.C. every year over fall break. This year over spring break, we are organizing for a trek to an emerging market as well. Location's not yet been confirmed, but we hope to kickstart that and offer that every year moving forward. We have a conference every year where we bring in speakers from the World Bank, Facebook, Google, USAID, a lot of different actors across for-profit, nonprofit platforms. We also offer a variety of social events to network with other students interested in this space. So if you're interested in business solutions to poverty, I would definitely encourage you to join this club. Lastly, I want to talk a bit about the Board Fellowship Program, which has definitely been a highlight of my experience at Ross. This program is open to MBA students and other schools as well. So you actually have the opportunity to serve on the board of a local nonprofit. There's a lot of incredible nonprofits who work with the program, and you get to rank your top choices. I was fortunate to serve on the board of 10,000 Villages, which was perfectly aligned to my background and career focus. 10,000 Villages is a fair trade retailer. They have stores throughout the U.S. and Canada, but I was assigned to the store here in Ann Arbor. So their mission is really to provide living wages for artisans in developing countries by selling their handcrafts. It's incredible stores. I definitely encourage you to check it out once you reach Ann Arbor. But really, all of the organizations through the program are just incredible. And so you can definitely find one that you're passionate about. I encourage you to apply for this program. It's really a unique opportunity to be able to serve on the board, to understand how boards function, whereas usually that's, serving on a board is something you wouldn't have the opportunity to do until later in your career. So this year I'm serving as a senior board fellow and supporting the board fellows for the coming year. I'm also still serving, I was asked to continue serving on the board of 10,000 Villages as well. So that's been a very exciting and incredible opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I love hearing all about these different experiences. So thank you again for sharing. I'll now turn it over to Dimitri to talk a little bit about the career resources available for students here at Ross.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. So as Elizabeth mentioned, we have a lot of career support here at Ross. And it's not just one source, the Career Development Office. We have a whole network of support for you. So in the first case, we have staff coaches like myself. We're mostly professionals who have industry experience. Many of us have our MBAs. We provide things like resume reviews, cover letter reviews, individual advising appointments, and so on. We also, as staff coaches, hire about 70 peer coaches. These are MBA 2s hired and trained by the Career Development Office who've interned in functional areas. So these are folks who, in the case of social impact, have spent summers, at the very least, doing social impact work. They lead something called the FACT group, which is a small group of 5 to 10 students led by MBA 2s throughout the fall semester that prepare you for recruiting in your given area. So they meet weekly, you go through a whole curriculum, and it's a nice peer support network, again, led by an MBA 2. We also have an employer relations team. So we have people on staff that are working regularly with companies and organizations to facilitate things on campus and even off campus job postings. Then we also have career clubs that the Career Development Office works closely with. So we have Net Impact, we've heard about several of the other ones, Emerging Market Club, Detroit Design Plus Business, Detroit Revitalization and Business, and the Career Development Office works on a number of things with these folks. So some I'll get into a little bit later, but have specifically to do with career support and alumni engagement. And speaking of alumni, we talked about this earlier, but our alumni network is incredible. Not just the Ross network, but the alumni network at Michigan at large, which is over 500,000 people. They work in some of the best places that you might want to go work at, and they're super responsive to any outreach you get to them. So super helpful in the career search. So when we talk about careers with impact, we think about it as a spectrum here, where you have working in a nonprofit or government on kind of the left end of the spectrum, as you can see here, and on the right you have more of a traditional company. So when you think about how you might want to work in impact, you might think, do I want to improve or increase the scale of impact at a place like a nonprofit or a government, or do I want to make a more traditional organization more impact oriented? And we have people at Ross that pursue opportunities all along this spectrum. So on the nonprofit or government side, we have alumni that go to places like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the City of Detroit. More in the middle of this spectrum, we have people that work at places like REI or that do things like impact consulting or impact investing. And on the far right of the spectrum, we have people that go to very traditional organizations, but are doing really impact-oriented work and are trying to innovate from within. So we have people working on supply chain at Walmart or on sustainability at Cargo, one of the largest food companies in the world, or working on corporate innovation at a place like New York Life Insurance, one of the largest insurance companies. So that's where our alumni are along the spectrum, and you can see too that our interns go all over the place in terms of impact. We have people that are pursuing nonprofits, impact investing, impact consulting, and also more traditional companies. So one thing to note here is that several of these organizations, we have students intern there year after year. For the last several summers, we've had people at Third Plateau, an impact consulting firm based in San Francisco. We've had a number of students over the last several years working with the Environmental Defense Fund with Walmart. We've had a number of students at the Rocky Mountain Institute, a think tank based in Colorado, doing a lot of work with renewable energy. Others of these are really unique and interesting and are pursued independently by the student with a lot of support from our alumni and our career development office. So you see we had a student at Align Impact this past summer doing impact investing. So with impact internships, you really can run the gamut. You can do something that is kind of a formal program, or you could really craft your own experience, get some funding from our school, and kind of spend the summer doing something unique, tailored to yourself. So to help you get that full-time job and that internship, the Career Development Office has partnered with NetImpact, a club here, to provide a curriculum of events and workshops to complement what happens in an impact factory. So kind of looking forward at what we have planned for the rest of the year, we have a boot camp coming up where we're going to dive deep into resumes, networking, elevator pitches, in anticipation of a big impact symposium that's happening in November, where we'll bring back a bunch of alumni and professionals that work in impact. In the past, we've had people come that are doing impact investing, impact consulting, people that are working on sustainability and impact-oriented things at Walmart. So this is a great chance for people that are pursuing a career with impact to network, to hear more about what these careers are like, make contacts, and so on. Then in December, we've got a kind of creating a game plan for winter break. So a lot of the career search for impact is off campus and a little bit later. So winter break is often a time that students spend networking and really working on that career search. So we've got a session about how to best spend that time coming up in December. And then looking further out in the year, January, February, March, we do some more interview preparation. And then in February, get deeper into what these summer internship funding opportunities are. So one funding opportunity is something called Give a Day Fund, which is actually money raised by students who are going into more traditional internships, and they donate a day of their salary that supports other students that are going to work for organizations that might not pay as much. And there are other funding sources available as well. So then in March, we have something called Ross Open Road, preparation for that, which is, as I think was mentioned earlier, 4 weeks where students spend doing 1 week consulting projects with students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth.
Awesome, thank you. So thank you so much for going over all those. Again, there are tons of resources for students coming to Ross going into social impact. So lots of opportunities there. I'm actually going to turn it back over to you, Dimitri, to talk a little bit about academics.
Great. So as far as academics go, there are number of classes, just a sampling of which are listed here that you can take at Ross. So strategies for the base of the pyramid talks about kind of the economic and impact opportunities that are available for the world's poorest. We also have a class on social entrepreneurship, which I took as a student and is a fantastic class. Kind of the premise of the class is, faced with this choice of, do I go work for a nonprofit? Do I go work for a traditional leading organization? What does creating change from within look like? And the class is really fantastic because it's based around live cases. So each student team is given a case, and then they present on that case. And sitting in the room with you are the people that are working on this real case that they're trying to make change from within a company there. And you get to hear their feedback from how you presented the case solution and have a really rich discussion. So during my year, we had people who had started the Whole Foods in downtown Detroit. And so we got to hear directly from the person who opened the Whole Foods store in Detroit about what that experience was like. I'm also going to hand it over here. I also want to mention here that you can take up to 10 of your 57 credits at other schools and colleges around Ross, or around University of Michigan. And University of Michigan has over 100 graduate programs in the top 10. So if you're really interested in healthcare, you can take classes at the School for Public Health. There are also dual degree programs with a number of different schools, including the School for the Environment and Sustainability, the School for Public Health, the School of Social Work, the School of Public Policy. So a lot of students that are interested with impact either consider doing a dual degree or at least taking a number of credits at that school. So I also want to mention something called LBLE, the Living Business Leadership Experience, and Tim, I think, is going to share a little bit about his experience with that.
Great. The Living Business Leadership Experience is just another way that Ross is leading the way among top business schools when it comes to action-based learning. So Living Business Leadership Experience, or LBLE, it provides the opportunity for students to really manage a portion of a local business. So there are companies such as Ford, Shinola, NRP, which works on affordable housing, where students are placed in the business and helping take a portion of that business forward. I'm currently in this course right now and planning to take it again and continue working with the company next semester as well. I have been placed with Warmaloo, so it's a local Ann Arbor startup that generated from the University of Michigan as well. They have invented this new technology which provides non-electric infant warming. And so a lot of the world does not have access to incubators, so a lot of babies die due to hypothermia, in fact, especially in developing countries. And so they've already been marketing and selling this product to hospitals overseas, but now they're looking to enter the U.S. market so that they can generate enough profits to subsidize their impact work abroad. And so our goal is determining how they should enter the U.S. market. And so we're actually helping the company launch this product in the U.S. right now, which is a very incredibly unique opportunity to apply what you're learning in the classroom to a real-world business scenario.
Awesome, thank you. So I just also want to mention again that this list of classes up on the screen you can see right now, it's only a few of the options that you can take here. So there's a ton of different opportunities for you to be able to dive deep into social impact within the classroom. I'll now turn it over to Jasmine to talk about Plus Lab.
Thanks. So Plus Lab is from the Center for Positive Organizations. So it's a year-long opportunity. So last year I joined as a first-year student, and this year I'm a second-year lead fellow. So the Center for Positive Organizations is a research center that shares theories and practices in the field of positive organizational scholarship, and it's all about building high-performing organizations. So in CPO, we examine topics like meaning and purpose, as well as culture and positive leadership at work. So as an MBA student, you can get involved with CPO through courses with faculty, as we just mentioned. We can attend the monthly Positive Links speaker series, where they bring in practitioners and researchers from all over the U.S. and internationally, or most deeply through their Plus Lab program. And so this is where, as students, we engage with visiting scholars and business leaders through events, and we take a course with one of the POS's founding faculty members. And so what I've loved about Plus Lab is that it's made up of MBAs, BBAs, and other graduate students. And so for me, having individuals from across all disciplines has been helpful in thinking about how this work affects various industries and disciplines. And so when I think about being a leader in the social impact sector, I wanted to come to business school to use it as 2 years where I could take a step back and reflect on how I wanted to show up as a leader, but also what my values were and the type of culture that I wanted to create in the workplace. And so understanding the power of developing people and creating a positive work environment was one of the topics that I felt was very beneficial for me to explore further. And so I've been able to do that through opportunities provided through at Ross, such as CPO and the Plus Lab, and then also co-curricular activities that I've taken advantage of through the Sanger Leadership Center. And so now we move on to Herb with Ricky.
Awesome. So I mentioned earlier when introducing myself that I am a dual degree student, so in Ross and the School for Environment and Sustainability. So an MBA MS student. I'm a second year, so last year I spent my first year at Ross going through all the core classes, marketing, finance, organizations, etc. And now I'm at SEAS learning more about ecological processes, and this cross-disciplinary approach has really helped to give me a systems background for business. So when I go into a business, I can understand the full impact of decisions on the environment and on people. And this has been a great way to get to know an amazing group of peers. We call ourselves Herbers. It's a very tight-knit group who are looking to make an impact either environmentally or socially across a range of industries. And the course options within this to get that cross-disciplinary approach has been really fantastic. As someone who wants to go into food, I'm currently in a food systems class where we get to go out to urban farms to do volunteer work and come together and consider a variety of options for the food system. And I get to bring the perspective of someone who has both experience in business, but also the experience within business school classes and through my map that I can bring to the conversation to sort of talk about how some of the issues that we're talking about in class can relate to what people in decision-making roles at businesses would be thinking about, what they would be weighing, which has been a great way to help myself teach others, but also learn from others in each program. Very unique perspectives exist in both schools, and it's been a great way to understand a wide variety of ways of thinking to then bring into my career.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now we have about 15 minutes left. So if you do have any questions that came up, please feel free to send them through the chat now, and we can address them with these last 15 minutes. With the questions that did come up, though, I'd love to address those now. So first and foremost, how do we connect students with their area of career interest? So Dimitri, would you like to respond to that question, or any of you all?
Sure. So we handle this in a couple of ways. So as you come in, based on your expressed career interest, you'll be paired with a CDO staff coach who will have your initial appointment with when you kind of before you arrive at Ross. So if you're interested in a particular functional area like finance, you might be matched with my colleague Amari. If you're interested in social impact, you might be matched with me. We have folks across consulting, marketing. I cover tech, social impact, entrepreneurship. So that will be your connection with a staff coach. Beyond that, before you actually start classes here, you'll still have to faculty, which go in even greater detail. So we have tech product management, tech marketing. We have social impact. We have a niche off-campus one. And so based on kind of self-exploration you've done over the summer in concert with conversations with staff coaches, we'll get you into a fac group, which will be a small cohort of students whose interests are closely aligned with your own, and you'll use that to navigate through the recruiting process in the fall.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So another question that came up is, how did you find your internship? So Ricky, Jasmine, or Tim, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So there's a conference for LGBT students called Ramba, which was very helpful, but also companies coming to campus. So I had a variety of interactions with companies who were at that conference, who came to campus, and those for me were really the main ways that I was getting in touch with large food companies. My own personal theory of change regarding food is working at a large food company to be that entrepreneur changing the way that they operate. And I was very happy with the breadth of companies who came to Ross and were seeking Ross students. And that's how I found mine.
Sure. Yeah. So for myself, there's actually a lot of different institutes as well that can help find internships. So like the Business Plus Impact, so there's William Davidson Institute, there's Zell Lurie Institute as well, who sources internships. And they also will provide funding if you source your own. So in my case, I sourced my own internship I had the guy who had invented the medical device that I was helping launch this summer. He's roommates with someone I worked with in South Sudan previously. Small world. They're both at University of Michigan School of Medicine. And so he came to me and asked for help launching the business. But there was a lot of great opportunities through the institutes as well, where they do source internships that you can apply for, or you can find your own and apply for funding through them.
And then for me, most of my internship search was off campus, and so really utilizing our alumni network and making sure that kind of the companies and organizations that I was interested in sort of knew, and setting up coffee chats, informational interviews. So all of mine was done off campus, and kind of came to Ross knowing that. And so really early on, started that focus and making sure that I was kind of on their radar at the beginning of my first year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So there's another question around math, and so I'll touch on that for just another point to make, because math is such a great opportunity here at Ross that is unique to Ross. So basically a second internship opportunity. When it happens is that it's at the end of the first year. It'll be a full-time consulting project that takes place for 7 weeks. So again, you'll have your core requirement courses that will lead up to this MAP project. So it'll, set you up for success within your MAP project. It'll take place before your 10 to 12 week internship. So it is another great way to be able to use skills that you learned from your core classes in MAP and then transition those into your internship. So it is also a great way to segue into a different industry. So for those of you who are actually career changers coming into business school, 88% of our students are career changers. So it's a great way to get into a new industry if that's not where you're coming from, but it's a great way to also apply those skills that you learned previously into MAP and then into your internship. Would any of you, since you saw the gigantic spreadsheet of over 100 different opportunities for MAP projects last year, would any of you like to touch on some of the other examples, and maybe some of your classmates did other social impact MAP projects? Would you like to talk about those?
Yeah, for sure. So one of my roommates worked with entrepreneurs in India, female entrepreneurs, which was amazing to learn about. And it's just a great way to be able to explore how to make an impact in the U.S., but also globally. I was really impressed by the global breadth of the projects that I was seeing. And for me personally, it was a great way to explore different career interests. So diving into marketing at a food company that was also having a huge impact on his community by providing jobs in a small town in Ohio was a really unique experience for me to have.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll add is sometimes even if the work itself, or like the MAP description does not clearly state that it's social impact, there's ways in which for social impact and making an impact on community. So for my MAP, we were really focused on kind of the pharmaceutical supply chain. But when I thought about it at the end of the day, it was about looking at the ethical sourcing and delivery of medicine. And so being able to help with the work that we're doing eventually helped to save lives and ensure that people were getting access to drugs that were not compromised. That in a way is also social impact. And so I think for a lot of the MAP projects, especially some of those that were working in international locations, there was the opportunity to do that even if it wasn't explicitly stated as a social impact project.
Tim, would you like to share anything?
I was trying to remember. I know there was quite a few and a lot that I had ranked in my top 15. I'm just trying to remember what they were. I'm pretty sure there was one about a company that started that makes prosthetic limbs, that they were working globally for areas where children don't have access to these, and they're looking to sell in the U.S. in order to subsidize the cost of these. I believe NRP was one as well, working on affordable housing. There are numerous others, to be honest. I just don't have the spreadsheet in front of me right now.
Awesome, thank you. And another question that came up: what is it like to be a social impact student in the Ross classroom? Would you guys like to share your perspectives?
Sure. So what I'll say is I think that our professors are very open to having students with diverse backgrounds. And so for many people, even if they're not going to social impact, some of our classmates have come from social impact careers. And so they're able to talk about their perspectives and their experiences. And I feel that my professors, even in some of the cases, I've been turnaround management. And so we looked at nonprofit organizations in some of our class case discussions, but then also outside of the classroom. I've gone to each of my professors and talked to them about wanting to go back into the education sector. And so many of them have connected me with their peers. And I've said, if I can be of any help as you are kind of going through this career journey and recruitment, please let me know. And so I think there's that support from professors also outside of the classroom, and knowing my background, they try to bring kind of me into the conversation, and I just personally have not been kind of shy about saying, kind of, who else is this impacting? What are other players that we're leaving out of this discussion? And so I think professors have been open to that as well.
Just to reiterate on that a bit, so what's unique, I think, about Ross is just the sheer number of students interested in impact. I was very surprised. I thought it would be just a very small niche segment, but it's actually a very large percentage of the students. And so you easily can connect with others interested in the space. And when you have, most of the classes are discussion-based, and so people regularly contribute their ideas, their diverse ideas to whatever we're discussing. And I think that's encouraged, and people really value those perspectives in the classroom.
Yeah, I would echo all of this, and I think that, how I've learned a lot from my peers around impact, a lot of us want to share our views on impact during class in different scenarios that we're talking about in different cases. And a lot of people come in with their own interest within impact and their own view of how that can be done, and it's amazing to learn from those ideas and expand my understanding of what impact can mean. And I love when that can happen in the classroom.
Awesome. Another question, how does social impact career, or your career within social impact your earnings, and how do you balance that with the cost of the MBA?
So I can speak to that. As I mentioned, career with impact is really along the spectrum, right? And I think you do see more Ross students tend to gravitate towards the right side of that spectrum, because that is where pay is more in line with the average MBA pay. Each individual makes their own balance about how they want to balance earnings and the cost of an MBA. But yeah, we do see that kind of that right side, going to work for a more traditional company and innovating from within, or working on a sustainability or impact related field kind of within that is an opportunity that a lot of people end up exploring, at least initially upon graduation.
And the one thing I'll add to that is I've had friends and alumni who've graduated, and Ross has a loan repayment assistance program. And so when I was looking at schools and knowing that I wanted to go into social impact, I wanted to go to a school that had this opportunity. And so the loan repayment assistance program, it provides assistance to graduates who pursue careers in nonprofit and the public sector. And so you can kind of Google that and search, and it'll come up kind of like the details and the details around that. But that was one thing, that if you are going to a social impact career afterwards, there are opportunities to help kind of repay loans, so that it's not as much of a burden, knowing that you won't make as much as your peers who are perhaps going to the private sector.
A friend of mine who graduated last year went to go work in an impact-related field and worked very closely with CDO to have those tough conversations around what pay should look like, given the value that she can bring with her MBA, and was able to work with that company to drive that pay higher, which I think was a really great example of CDO helping support students here, make sure that the value they can provide is really clear to that employer, and that they're making that case while also being mindful of the fact that sometimes these companies are a little bit more cash strapped than some of the more traditional MBA firms.
Awesome. So I think we only have time for about one more question. So last question will be, is there an overlap between social impact and other career interests? I think we touched on this mostly, but if there's anything else you'd all like to add?
Yeah, I think I can start by answering this. So, yeah, I think there's a tendency to think of social impact as like a separate career function, and that's really not what it is. You can have an impact no matter what it is you go into. Whether going to Amazon, you come up with a new initiative that can improve staff well-being. Maybe working for UPS, and you come up with a more efficient delivery model, which saves tons in carbon emissions and also saves money for the company. I mean, literally any field you go into, you can have an impact. And so I think its focus is developing leaders who have that mindset going out into the world and are well equipped to make a massive impact in the world through leveraging the power of business.
Awesome. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining from everywhere around the world, and thanks to our staff and students for taking the time to share your experiences with us today. It's been awesome. So thank you again, and go blue. Go blue. Go blue.
Go blue.
Is it done?
Love that.